Hello, welcome to Ask Allie's Facebook Live. It is the end of July, if you cannot believe it. I can't either. And I'm looking forward to chatting today about what life stages you need estate planning. Here's like a tip, all of them. But in all seriousness, I'm going to go through some of the key stages. And my internet is not behaving, so I will continue on as best I can, and hopefully this works, and if not, I'll reshoot it. So first is, say you are single, probably just turned 18. That's like the first life stage that we deal with when you need documents, because before 18, your parents are in charge. And as soon as you turn 18, your parents are no longer in charge, which means they no longer have access to your medical information. They no longer have access to your bank statements, all those sorts of things. So it's really important that if you have someone who is turning 18 or you are over 18, that you have incapacity documents. And what I mean by incapacity documents are powers of attorney for finance, an advanced healthcare directive in California, that's what we call advanced healthcare directive, HIPAA release, and a will. So that's first stage, just turned 18. Single package, someone who doesn't have any children, doesn't have a lot of stuff going on, but basically, wants to make sure if they're incapacitated that they would have management of their assets. Second life stage is usually marriage, kids, and honestly, there's no judgment around which one comes first. Doesn't really matter in the eyes of the law, except for it impacts your documents. So first, if you get married, it's important that you have documents that reflect your legal status as a married person, so that they can either be your power of attorney, be your healthcare agent, or not be your power of attorney, or not be your healthcare agent, as the case may be. There are circumstances when you don't want your spouse to be in those roles. And so it's really, really important that you have the right documents that reflect your legal status and your wishes. Things that you might consider when you're married, and even when you're single, is a trust. That's one of the things that we use in California to avoid the probate process, and can be incredibly important if you're married with a blended family. So your spouse and you have kids from different relationships. You want to make sure that the trust would be in place to care for or protect both sides of the beneficiaries. And then, so think about that. If you're married and you're like, oh, my spouse is not on my bank account. Well, they don't have access to your stuff without a power of attorney. I don't care if they're married to you. Or if you have separate property, you die without a will, some of it will go to your kids and some of it will go to your spouse, and that might not be what you want. So it's really important that you either have a will, power of attorney, healthcare directive, and probably a trust. Also, trust I love because succession planning. You can say, I want my beneficiaries to be these people, and then if something happens to those people, you've got backups, and so we can avoid court orders by doing it that way. Next up is kids. I love working with families who have kids because there's a lot that's going on there. Not only do we need the incapacity documents for the adult, but we also need guardianship nominations for the kids to make sure someone could care for them, take them to school, get them to the doctor if something happened to the parents. And then if the kids inherit money, you want to make sure they probably don't get it at 18. Raise your hands if you have kids who are probably not responsible enough to receive an inheritance or a life insurance payout of $100,000 or more when they turn 18. I always joke that the boys will go buy sports cars and the girls will go shopping. Stereotypical, not really fair. But in all honesty, consider what would happen if your kids would get a big chunk of money as soon as they turn 18. They'd probably spend it. They probably wouldn't invest it, wisely with the stock market and bonds and buy real property. They'd probably buy, the first thing that came to mind. So, don't let that happen. Yeah, Jared raised his hand. That's most of our children. Even at a very young age, you're like, oh, I don't think you should be managing money. Let's put someone else in charge. So the guardianship, along with the children's trust, is a great planning tool to avoid court orders for money, to put the people you in charge of those kids' money that you want, that you trust. Fun fact, in California, if you don't have a guardianship nomination and something happens to both the parents, then the grandparents step in. And I hope you don't make your grandparents or your parents fight over your grandkids if they had to. It can be a really, really messy fight. And oftentimes it's like whoever gets to the courthouse first, which is super, super not fun. So guardianship nominations, really important, along with the children's trust. And we can actually design the children's trust to say, my kids get their money when they turn 35, or they get money for college, or they get money in stages as they go through life stages. We can provide for money for a wedding or to open a business, but not to go, shopping or traveling around Europe, which nobody gets to do right now anyways. Sorry, bad COVID joke. So that's the children stuff. Then retirement is sort of the next life stage that I deal with people. Chances are they might have done any planning and they're like, oh, I'm retiring. And oh, by the way, I'm now maybe realizing the thing and I might need to deal with it. Incapacity. They may have been dealing with their parents who've gone through a recent, change, probate, or in a conservatorship. And oh man, it can be messy. So if you're in retirement stage, good time to 1, look at your finances, and 2, find out what your succession plan is. Who are the beneficiaries on your accounts? Do you have a power of attorney for finance? When is the last time you looked at your healthcare directive? It needs to be updated so it's current with the current laws and the current HIPAA regulations. Unfortunately, with COVID, a lot of people are not able to see their friends and family in the hospitals. And so if you don't have a document that authorizes them, the medical professionals to talk to your family, they won't. So you've got to have that in place before you are incapacitated and stuck in a hospital bed. It's so important and so tragic that we have to deal with that as reality now, but it's really, really important to get that done. So healthcare directive, power of attorney. You might hear that I'm repeating myself because all of these documents are so important in various different life stages. And then the last life stage is someone, they don't really encounter all the time, but that sort of end of life might be long-term care. So chances are if you're watching this, you're not in this stage, but you might have family members who are. They're in need of additional resources and care, 24-hour long-term care, memory care, dementia care. It kind of goes through all those sorts of things. And it's important to talk to an attorney, probably you or your parents if they still have capacity, to make sure that they have properly outlined what happens with their stuff while they're alive, but more importantly, who's going to manage their stuff after they die, but more importantly, who's going to manage their stuff while they're alive? Who's going to pay the premiums? Do they have the resources to do that? Do you have to sell the house? I actually have tools and planning techniques that allow people to keep their home and still go into memory care. And I think it's incredibly important that people explore their options before they just start willy-nilly selling off things when they don't need to, because there's some really important stuff that we have out there. And then post-death, I pray that everyone has their documents in order before they pass, because otherwise it's the probate process and a bunch of money to the attorney. And that's my job, really, is to try and avoid that awful process and make it easy for the family who's left behind to administer the trust and get the trust property or the beneficiaries' money into their hands in the most efficient manner possible. So that is Ask Allie's, all the life stages and those sorts of things. So hopefully you know someone who needs planning. Give them my contact information. I'm happy to walk them through this. Show this video if they're not in my area. Just make sure they get documents. That's really the most important thing. It's not the most important thing that you hire my firm. It's the most important thing that you have your documents in place. And there's lots of resources out there. So I encourage everyone to take a look at your life stage. Think about your documents. If you don't have them, go ahead and get your documents, and that'll be good. So again, my name's Allie. I'm the owner of Goff Legal, and we're up and running, man. It's a busy time, and I'm excited to be able to help a lot of clients, and I look forward to meeting with you. If you have questions for the next Ask Allie, please message me or go ahead and put something in the chat. Oh, here we go. Jared has a question. I'll answer his question. Oh, yeah. So this is a good topic. What to do when your family member needs estate planning documents but doesn't want to plan because they don't want to think about death. And it's a hard topic. Death is scary. And so sometimes it's sending blog posts of relevant information. Sometimes it's talking with an attorney. We can be kind of scary attorneys, just to be quite frank. We have magic knowledge, which is really not true. We just went to law school for a long time to figure this stuff out. But, having the conversation about what would you like if, we can have the conversation of if someone passes away rather than when you die. It's not really fun to confront death. And unfortunately, the people who don't plan sometimes end up paying the most amount of money. I will tell you, I have right now a case where we had to file for an emergency conservatorship, and we billed about $10,000 in the first week because it was such a rush to get this person the care they needed, because they didn't have family who was willing to step up. They didn't have documents in place. They didn't have the title to their house and the trust, and it gets really expensive really quickly and a big old nightmare for the family. So I really hope that the family members sort of understand if they don't plan, obviously it's not going to affect them. They'll be gone. It will affect the people that they're leaving behind. So sometimes that's enough to get the parents involved to say, okay, I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for my kids. And if you've got kids, that's who's going to be left to clean up the mess. Or not clean up the mess. If it's planned properly, it could be actually a really smooth process. So I hope that answered your question. And if not, like I said, message me. I will answer more next time. All right. Thanks, you guys, for joining. Nice to see everyone. Bye. Happy Monday.